And welcome back to part 3 of Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, where today, after getting all the power-ups we can get in these upper quarters, we're going to the opposite end of the castle, literally, to go to the floating garden. Because now we have Undyne, the ability to stand on water, we can reach a platform in the sewers to make it to the next proper area. And the floating garden is kind of interesting because it's the only area in the game that you essentially have, like, plot progression have to go through twice. Because it has a boss, you just can't fight it on your first visit, but it's on the path to getting to the next area we're aiming for. Also, I like this, the Kioma demon that's hiding in the reflection. I like this guy. You have to wait around for it to come out and then you can kill it. On my blind playthrough, the very first one I killed, it dropped its soul, which made grinding so much more manageable, because you have to wait for that thing to come out the mirror every time. So if it didn't give it to me then and there, that would have just added to the grind. Oh, I got Valkyrie. Okay, we're winning. Speaking of, off screen, I might chuck it in anyway at the start. I haven't decided yet. I got Curly, so I can show you the thing I want to show you later on. But here's Undyne. Undyne essentially treats the water surface as a thin platform. So if you hold down and press jump, you'll still drop through them, like you would if it was any kind of thin platform. But that's the general gist. You can stand on the water's edge to reach heights you usually couldn't. And it's only really applied in a very small handful of situations. And only 2 of them, well, I say that, the path we just took, I don't think is even canonical. Not canonical, intended. Like, you can go a different route if you don't want to do it. It's not mandatory, that's the word I'm looking for. But you don't have to take that path, you can take a different path back down. The only one you have to use is in the floating garden. Or to get into the floating garden, sorry. And so it's kind of like, if you're going for 100%, it gains a few more uses, because there's a few areas in a zone much later on that has a lot of water around it, and you can use Undyne to get to certain heights and whatnot. But if you're just going for the mandatory path and nothing else, Undyne only has 1 mandatory use. Which makes it about as worthwhile as the slide kick thing that we got earlier, last part as well. But there's another warp, so I add it to the list so we can walk back here easier. Even if you're not intending on using it straight away, it's usually a good idea to tap a warp room as you pass it by, just for 100% completion convenience. Being able to get back up here whenever you feel the need is far more handy than having to find the second closest and then work your way around and up and dangle it, and it's just it's awkward. Until we get better field abilities later on, navigating the castle quickly isn't the best thing to do. It's better to be able to just be at a better starting point than just rely on your physical abilities to get around quickly. Oh, Persephone, that's another nice one. Absorb enemies' HP with magical items. Now, and this Lilith is unfortunately not the version of that enemy I want. There's another version of that enemy, like the same design, just different color, called a succubus, that will appear later on. That one, that is a mandatory kill, and not even for any kind of secret. No, for the true ending you need to get a succubus soul. But they appear in the flocks later on, so don't stress about getting it too much, not yet. There's a number of locations coming up in the game where the 2 missable but mandatory demons can be gotten. And I mean missable, I don't mean as in one and done and then they're gone for good. I just mean as in there's only a chance drop, so you gotta work for it. I'm doing alright today. Let's got Killer Doll. There's another enemy that's got Killer in its name that I'd rather get. But that's a little later on. That's the Killer Mantle. And that's just because that thing, I only want to show it off for 1 optional enemy, and that's it. But anyway, we can go straight to the floating garden now, and like I said, there's nothing really stopping us. We should be heading straight for it, and the game encourages you to do that because in the inner quarters there's 2 shortcuts that kick you out back into the castle corridor, both of which are kind of close to that block in the sewer where you can stand on the water to get up into the floating garden. So the game is not so subtly leading you to go back that direction. But I'm still here because there is a tease for one of the last areas of the game that's here that I want to showcase as well. Because the top floor, which is usually the last area of most Castlevanias. I say most because there are a lot of outliers. Aria is actually one of them. It's only the last area if you're not going for the true ending. It's the same with Symphony. Symphony, if you're going only as far as the battle against Shaft, or the battle against Richter even, because Shaft is the inverted tower, and Richter at the top of the normal tower, it ends on the top floor as well there. But if you're going for the true ending, it carries on going. But here's the top floor, and we can't go up from here, so we can't go up there. So we are restricted for now from reaching the top floor. But beyond the top floor, this just leads to another part of the castle corridor. So we're kind of done here in terms of what we can explore. So I am going to cut to show you the next thing of interest. Now we've got a few abilities since we were last here. Right, there was a room that split off from the main path that had a platform just slightly too high for us to reach. But now with double jump, we can. And it leads to an armor plate that is kind of worthless at this point in the game. The copper plating is... You have better, as you can see. You have to kind of come here as soon as for it to be worthwhile. And that's kind of it. There are other things I can show. Like, you can see there's gaps on the map of areas we've already been to where there's more to show. But there's nothing of enough significance for me to justify running all the way over there to show it. Because most of them only have money as rewards. And it's like, well, you can get money elsewhere and you can run over there yourself. So what's the point, you know? Especially because money is very easy to come by in Aria of Sorrow. It's not as easy as I think as Harmony of Dissonance. Harmony of Dissonance had consistent money drops from certain items. So if you found one that dropped good money, you could just keep on leaving and re-entering the room, breaking the same pot and get the same amount of money. But it's about time we finally broke up here into the floating garden. And as I mentioned before, you can actually get here early because the game picks up you landing on platforms kind of weird. If you come on it from a sideways angle, Soma has a habit of clipping through onto the platform. So you can get here without having to do the inner quarters to get Undyne. So you can get here like as soon as you get double jump, essentially. Which is a huge skip, and you're going to be very underleveled. But if you're going for the the speedrun tech, that is something you can start with. It's always that specific Red Crow. Now that I think almost every playthrough I've done, that specific Red Crow is always the one that drops the soul. I don't know if that's a guarantee or whether it's just the RNG on the number manipulation. It always happens to be lined up every time I enter the room that happens. But that seems extremely consistent that thing always drops the soul for me. Like that specific Red Crow. But the floating garden works a little weird. And there's actually a third castle map here. It's the only one you can't buy. That I will pick up because it's on the way and it will help me explain the gimmick of this area. It's basically a teleporting maze. You've got this main central block that we're currently in, but in the top left corner and the top right corner, if you go through it, you'll just end up somewhere else. And now we have Castle Map 3, you can see all the other portal spots. You see how weird it kind of looks, but it's just here, there, and everywhere across the top line? Yeah, that's where different portals will take us, in this main block here. So if we exit out the top left corner, or the top right corner, it will take us to one of those blocks, and it will go in a sequence of patterns. However, to actually get through this area, you need to go through them left only. If you go through them through the right, you will essentially go 1, 2, 4, 5. But if you go through them the other way, you will go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And 3 is the room you need because that's what leads to the next area. So if you only go through it in one direction, you will get a little lost. Because that's what actually happened to me. I did actually explore it in both directions, but I just didn't register because all the portal rooms look the same. I didn't register I was in a new portal room and so got lost. But over here's a new enemy, the Devil. All the Devil variants I really don't think are that bad. Which is a shame because they've been downgraded significantly since Circle of the Moon. The Devil enemies in Circle of the Moon were horrendously evil to deal with. They were more damaging and more difficult to deal with than half the bosses. But in saying that, Circle of the Moon is a very difficult Vania to begin with. And it's another one that I might cover one day. It's just I don't love it as much as Aria of Sorrow. If I'm going to come back to another Vania after this, I think the next Vania I'll do will probably be a classic Vania. Like I'll either do Super Castlevania 4 or Rondo of Blood. And then after that, at some point, I'll do Symphony. Because as much as Symphony is my favourite, I I don't want to like race into it. I've really got to be in the mood. And I was just in the mood for Aria when I did this instead of Symphony, so here we are. And because Aria was already fresh on my mind because I went through the whole Advanced collection, I was like, well, yeah, sure, I'll go through Aria again. But yeah, have you seen why I like Valkyrie so much? That spell I bring up where the water-like spirit thing like comes up and like whacks the sword straight up, that's holy magic. Holy magic in this game is ridiculously overpowered. It's because almost everything in this game, outside of one real major exception, is weak to holy. So you're getting extra damage out of it, and it's a heavy hitting skill. Yes, it costs a hefty amount of magic, but at least that's the only effort they make to balance it. And your magic will naturally regenerate over time anyway, and any heart you pick up goes into your magic as well. So that's a really nice skill to have, to be a strong damage dealing, like one hit and done kind of skill. As I say, it's not reached its full potential yet. There is a holy sword we'll be getting later on that is the epitome of overpowered. It's not Crusagram bad, but it's bad. And if you don't know what I'm talking about because you haven't really played Manius before, the Crusagram is a weapon from Symphony of the Night that is infamous for how absurdly overpowered it is. I mean, extremely infamous for how overpowered it is. But when you go through it, there's this checkpoint room that's all, no matter what, will be the third room you go through. Well, it'll be either the third or the fourth, depending on which angle you come from, but you'll always bump into it on your main path. And it's significant, not only because it has a save, but it also has the Floating Gardens boss tucked away. You know, the one that I said you can't access yet. Your first visit, you cannot access it. Well, yeah. It's also got this little guy, the Kicker Skeleton, that I'm going to go out of my way to quickly grind up and kill. Not because it has any skill that's mandatory, but because it speeds up the game slightly. It's a built-in soul, not a colored soul, so you just have this. It allows you to drop kick. If you press down or diagonal down and then the attack button whilst you're in midair, you will like go foot first straight down in that direction. It is really helpful for getting around. That's the boss door we can't access yet, so don't worry about it just now. It's the only field skill that is tied to an enemy. Like, all the rest are either pickups from an item box, or something you have to break to get it, or is a like guaranteed boss drop or something like that. Like, it's the only one that's just a normal enemy that you can miss. There is another one that is entirely optional that you can miss, like ignoring sequence breaking. But that one is later on, and I'm going to tell you right now, get it. When we get to a situation when it's available to get it, beeline straight for it, because it's the last like secret trick for Soma to really open up just how mobile he really is in this game. Because that's probably the biggest reason why I love Aria Sorrow so much. Other than the fact that I find its castle really rewarding to explore, which is something that I can't say for every single Igavania. Some Igavanias get a little tiring. Like, it's part of the reason why I'm not the biggest Harmony of Dissonance fan, because I find that castle tiring to explore. I find it way too big for its own good, and I find a lot of it's kind of wasted air. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of rooms in that game that I just forget exist. Whilst Aria of Sorrow feels more compact, but everything matters to something. And there's shortcuts here, there, and everywhere, so navigating the castle becomes more and more natural as you go. It starts to become like the exploring your own, like, streets kind of thing, where you just get a better feel for it. It's the same reason why I love Symphony. Even though Symphony's castle's a hell of a lot bigger, and the inverted castle has problems, but just because of the whole nature of how it works, Symphony of the Night's castle I know at the back of my hand. I love going through Symphony of the Night's castle. Circle of the Moon, it's a lot more linear in structure. Like, it's very much a this is zone 1, this is zone 2. But a lot of it I can understand because it was their first like Game Boy Advance Castlevania, so they were still testing the waters in a lot of ways. So didn't want to get overly ambitious and have it bite them in the arse. Because Aria of Sorrow is pretty ambitious, but the reason why it gets away with it is because it's their third one. It's their third GBA Vania, so they knew what they were doing. Did you spot what I just did there? This is me going back to tap the save quickly because look at my health. But did you notice something was a bit weird about how we entered this room? How we entered it from the left and then went back right and we was in here instead of back in the other zone. That's because we completed the puzzle by going left, so I had to go backwards to undo the puzzle. But if you go right and then immediately go left again, you'll be back in the right zone. This is the zone that leads you out of the the floating garden. So, and as you've probably noticed, all of the like warp zones look very similar. In fact, they're identical, they just have different enemies. And that's what I meant while my blind playthrough like a while ago. Because Aria Sorrow, like, to break some of you guys' minds, I don't have this game known for years. I didn't grow up with the GBA Vanias. I only really got into these more recently when I was marathoning all the Castlevanias. And so it's not as like fresh on me, or as like nostalgic or like long tied to me as it is for some of the other games. So I know a lot of people tell me that like, oh, Aria Sorrow is the real best Vania. People that like Symphony of the Night the best are just biased because they don't want to accept nostalgia's difference. And I'm like, well, no, Symphony of the Night is genuinely a better game. What the hell are you on about? Aria Sorrow definitely has improved controls, but Symphony of the Night has better everything else. So we meet again. I'm glad to see you're unscathed. Good to see you too. I got something I want to ask you. Sure, go ahead. Someone told me that you are to inherit Dracula's powers. I take it that lady from the church told you that, didn't she? It's not true, is it? The term inherit is incorrect. It's true then! I was born on the very day that Dracula was destroyed. So in short, that means that I am Dracula. That can't be right. You've been so kind and friendly to me. That is because I don't consider you a threat to my mission. But that being said, you have made it this far, I sense a power within you. Do tell me, what kind of power is awoken within you? The power to rule. What? You foolish boy, that's impossible. Huh? I can't remain here any longer. I must get to the throne. Your name is Soma, right? You are wrong, Soma. I will not allow you to rule. Jeez, what was that all about? And why was this run animation like ripped out of Circle of the Moon? Did you see that? If you've played Circle of the Moon, you know what I mean. But now it's time for the Clock Tower, which is a series staple. I think the Men of Innocence is the only exception to the rule because that game's based in the Crusades. But in every single Castlevania, there is a clock tower that you will be going through. The only other real exception, like, is that there's a couple of Vanias where it's technically optional if you know what you're doing. Like Symphony of the Night's clock tower is technically optional if you know what you're doing. Which I guess is another merit because the clock tower tends to be the more annoying areas of the game no matter what one it's in. This game being no exception because now I'm kind of cornered. My only way to hurt this enemy is to be in the firing line. So I can't really get around. I mean, I could be jumping, but I know it's nearly dead. I was just trying to damage race it and losing there. And it's also the origin of Medusa Heads. And thankfully, this game came out after the nerf. Because, oh, we got another cutscene. I'll do that first. Hello, Soma. Hey, Yoko. I just ran into Graham. Really? Which way did he go? He was in a rush to get to the throne. Just as I thought, there is something important to the throne room. I'm sorry, Yoko. What? What's wrong? What's with you all of a sudden? He's not who I thought he was. He was kind to me only because he thought I was powerless. I see. But his attitude changed suddenly when I told him about my power. Well, in his mind, he thinks everything in this castle is his. So that's the reason? But it's better this way. What is? The fact that he sees you as an enemy means that you're now my comrade. Does it? What? You don't want to be on my side? No, that's not what I meant. Oh, it's so much fun to tease you, but it's just not the time to be fooling around. Your presence here has thrown Graham into a panic, so this is our chance. What sort of chance? Using his cunning mind, he's been able to evade us up until now. I don't think anyone has ever seen him panic before. I get it, circumstances right now are making him act this way. That's exactly right. This is an excellent opportunity to trap him. Well, I must be on my way. See you. And the cutscene just ends. Like, I kind of wish that Soma would have like an extra line or two to himself where he thought on the topic, because we don't get we get an idea of his personality, but we don't get enough of like his like moment to moment thoughts, I feel like. Because Aria Sorrow, and this isn't to discredit the other Vanias, but Aria Sorrow is the first Vania that really felt like the story had a lot more significance. Despite the fact it's still pretty simple. Also, this enemy, I forgot we encountered it this soon. The bomber armor. I've got a fight to pick with you, but I've got other things to talk about. I kind of wish this game leaned into it a little bit more. They do a lot more in Dawn of Sorrow, And I know Dawn of Sorrow does a lot of weird things and isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I really liked that, starting with Dawn of Sorrow, that each Vania had more of a story focus. So I'm just jazzing to the music whilst I think about my points as I talk. I shouldn't really be doing it. I'm recording. I can't just be standing around. There's time wasting in this video. But next, I want to talk about those Medusa Heads. I said they nerfed them. Back in the good old days, Medusa Heads, every single Medusa Head could petrify you if they hit you. Petrify is when you're turned to stone and you can't move and you have to wiggle left and right to break out of it. And if you're hit again whilst you're turned to stone, it does either double damage or triple damage depending on what game you're playing. Some Vanias are more evil than others and will make it triple damage, while some are more forgiving. But I can't remember if it was this game or Harmony of Dissonance that started it. It might be Harmony of Dissonance. But they started making it that there's two variants of Medusa Heads, blue ones and yellow ones. Oh, nice! That'll be helpful. The blue ones won't petrify you, the yellow ones will. So, it's a little less frustrating, because that's the biggest thing of Medusa Heads. They just move from left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, floating up and down like this. And they can come into dozens and just bully you around, as you're seeing it kind of happen to me a little here, trying to get up from that spike corner. Because that's the thing, this game's clock tower I think is one of the more manageable ones, but almost all the secrets that are hidden within a room are designed in a way that you can only take damage getting out, or risk dealing with Medusa Heads trying to get out. Like, everything's tucked in corners to make it more awkward. It's certainly not the worst clock tower. There are other clock towers in this series that make me want to tear my hair out. I really don't like Bloodlines' clock tower. And I remember Rondo of Blood's clock tower being a little annoying. I think that's what I'm thinking of, and not Supervania 4. So it's one of those two. One of those two had a clock tower that I found kind of annoying to deal with. But I didn't mind them. I'm just saying it was annoying to deal with. Nothing gets as bad as Dracula's Curse, but that's because Dracula's Curse is an extremely difficult game to begin with, and so its clock tower really feels like it's torturing you. Over here is another tease at the top floor. Like, they do it, like, I like that they do that. Like, they have it just underneath and then to the side, that you can get these little teases of the last real area you're aiming to go for. As we go back through the clock tower. This is a good grinding spot, by the way, these enemies here, for the Siren and Harpies. It's even if it's a low-ish room, so they could fly higher or flow high enough for you to not be able to reach them. It's still helpful. Oh, and up here is another instance of a previous boss now become a normal enemy. It's the guard. Just always be careful approaching it. The great armor, any armor enemy, because there are other variants of this enemy that we'll bump into a little later on. When the fight starts, they have their sword down and they'll lift it up. That can hurt you, and all great armors or variants of it hurt hard if they hit you. Speaking of things that hurt hard, we're approaching the next boss, and this one, if this is your first Vania or you're not that used to Aria Sorrow, good luck. This boss is the first real wall. This one is the one that will test what you can do, because you have to actually learn this fight to get good at it. You can't just damage spam and outrank it. This is Death, which is probably like one of the earliest times in a Castlevania you have a boss fight against Death. They usually leave it like right near the end, because Death directly works under the Lord Dracula himself in Castlevania's mythos. But Dracula in this game, as it's already been stated, died in 99, and I mean truly was ended in 99. Whilst this is 2035, so this is many years later, so Death is a lot more freelancing now, which is maybe why they like deranked his position, because like I said, he's the clock tower boss now, instead of like a much later game boss. But it doesn't change the fact that he's still worthy of being a fight against Death. Something that's kind of common across the series is that they're pretty tough. Like, I can't really think off the top of my head of any real outliers in the Death fights where any of them are particularly easy, other than maybe Harmony of Dissonance. But that's not Death's fault, that's because that game is painfully easy. Harmony of Dissonance, I know I complain about Harmony of Dissonance a lot, and one day I might do a Let's Play of it to showcase what I do actually like about it, because there are things that I promise I don't all just hate it. It's just there's a lot I have problems with, and I feel like as a whole it's a weaker title than Circle of the Moon, despite being more non-linear as a whole. But this second phase is the real threat. The first phase is more just navigating and moving around, but this second phase, all of the attacks can have weird positioning, and that attack's annoying because sometimes he'll do it a slight like pixel higher than he did and you can crouch under it. Sometimes he will do it a pixel lower and you can't crouch under it. And sometimes attacks will just clip through you for no reason, like it just did there. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. It was nice to have one of the enemy's attacks, you know, not hit me. But it was still weird. So just to be safe, because I know I'm low on health, I'm going to back up when it goes to do that instead of trying to crouch under it. But yeah, okay, you can crouch under that one. He did it a bit higher. Okay, it's dead. Good. Death is another boss that you're guaranteed to get its soul after it dies. But I'm going to level with you right now. It's not great. The main treat here is that if you're here in hard mode, Death's Scythe is actually in the area. And you can pick it up if you have a power-up that we don't have just yet. So you have to remember it's there and come back for it. As we pick up Sculler, the opposite of Undyne. Sculler will make us sink like a rock to the bottom of the ocean so we can explore underwater areas. Which is what we'll be doing in the next video. So next time on Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, we go deep beneath the castle to see what secrets lurk there. That little ledge there, that's where the sickle is, if you're on hard mode. Anyway, I'll see you guys around. Take care now. Peace.